Welcome to a special series of This Week in Canton City Schools, where we'll focus on the mental health and wellness of our kids and families. I'm Jaclyn Power, the broadcast media instructor here at the Timken Career Campus of McKinley High School, and your host today. The Canton City School District continues to partner with Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Agency. This agency provides a myriad of resources to the Stark County community and, most importantly, to our students within CCSD. Each month, we will feature resources and strategies to help the mental well-being of our young people. On this episode, we are talking with a team of individuals from CNA and our very own McKinley High School mental health champions to discuss everything around Stark County Schools Mental Health Awareness Week. Sit tight, all of that starts right now. As we continue to look for ways to have a healthy, happy, balanced lifestyle, there's no greater need than to work with our mental health and wellness to meet the unique needs of our changing world around us. This series of shows with the Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health Agency will feature all kinds of different ways to address some of the common setbacks we face today. On today's episode, we have a whole bunch of people. Mike Gallina, Vice President of Organization Development and Community Engagement for AultCare. John Aller, Executive Director of Stark County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery. Joe French, Chief Executive Officer at Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health. They're all up first. And in our second segment, Joe Rowland, Resiliency Service Coordinator. Bri'Rell Pickney and Celebrity Brown both are Canton City School District 2023 Stark County Student Mental Health Champions. They'll join us for the second segment. So, Joe, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you. Yeah, I'm excited that you decided to do a round two with me. So it's nice to see you again. So can you remind our viewers a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you ended up at CNA?
Sure. So I have been at Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health for over 8 years now. My background is in education. I have a bachelor's in elementary ed. My master's is in early childhood education. Taken a couple courses towards my doctorate in educational leadership. Ended up at CNA because I care about kids. And we know that if children aren't able to socially and emotionally learn, their academics will never come. So how important it is for us to be in the schools providing those services directly to our young ones.
And Mike, though you're a new face sitting on the set with us today, welcome to the show. You're not a new face to Canton City, so when you walked in today, I was like, oh my gosh, the face, the name, now I get it. So welcome to the show. Following Joe's lead, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, and then kind of talk about that extensive work so far that you've done as a career.
Yeah, what a journey. I can think about born and raised in Minerva, Ohio, not too dissimilar from John that we'll hear a little bit later. University of Mount Union, education major, minored in learning disabilities. My very first job was middle school learning disabilities. Wonderful opportunity. Returned back to Minerva as a teacher and a coach, a principal, and then I was a superintendent of Minerva Local Schools for 11 years. Finished my educational career as a superintendent of North Canton City Schools for 8 years. So 30 years in education, 24 in administration, the last 19 of those were as a school district superintendent. But then takes me to my second career. Didn't see this one coming, and this was 11 years ago. The folks at Altman and AultCare said, Mike, have you ever thought about doing leadership development in a corporate world? I said, nope, I'm a school guy. I'm going back over to Mount Union and teach ed leadership. That makes sense for me. A couple meetings later, and 11 years ago, I've been with AultCare and Altman ever since.
It's a fantastic journey. I grew up in Carrollton. I'm a graduate of Carrollton, so
Warrior.
Yeah, we're just on opposite sides of town. We won't talk about our little bit of our rivalry, but
so noted.
Yeah, much respect for working in the neighboring town and then finding your way to kind of that corporate side of things and still being able to help people, because that's really that tandem between education and corporate world. I do feel like that's so many educators can make a difference in that way. because it's still about helping people. So without being left out, John, thank you for coming to the show. Please tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, how did you become the leader of StarkMHAR?
Sure. So John Aller and I grew up in Minerva, as Mike said, and actually Mike's dad was the superintendent when I graduated and the football coach. So it's always nice to see him. But my background is I got an undergraduate in psychology, got a master's in community counseling, and started working. My first job, interesting, was working in Akron Public Schools for kids that either had parents who were using or addicted to substances, or they were at risk themselves. And so rotated through the schools in Akron for a couple years, then moved into doing residential treatment on the alcohol and drug side, and came back into Stark County about 23 years ago, working on a program with dual diagnosed clients who had both mental health and addiction issues, and trying to kind of work on getting them into recovery. And so that program, frankly, it was a different time and we weren't as technologically advanced, but it showed some barriers to people being able to access care. And so I got really interested in public policy and moved over to StarkMHAR, where frankly we're the organization in the community that are able to fund the providers in the community behavioral health system, but also frankly set policies and help provide funding and determine what gaps are in service, which frankly the program we're talking about today kind of enhances an existing program that's been in place through our providers for a long period of time. And so we're always happy to support initiatives like that.
Well, what a very diverse background of the gentlemen that are sitting around the table today, and your appreciation for just like that compassion piece. I think you share obviously a compassion piece and a help piece. So I'm super excited to have all three of you here today. So Joe, we'll kind of start with May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. So here in Stark County, May 1st through the 5th is designated as Stark County Schools Mental Health Awareness Week. So tell our viewers a little bit about the history of this event, and has the event grown the past 5 years, and kind of maybe take us through kind of the journey of the last couple years.
Sure. So in 2019, our mission advancement team came to me with this idea of really promoting Mental Health Week within the schools. As John said, it kind of coupled with our consultation model that we've been in the schools for many years. And so we thought, what better way to kind of just provide positive affirmations to our students. So 2019 was a typical school year, and so we started with the 8 different districts that we were providing consultation to. And then we said, I think we have something here that all school districts could really benefit from. And so in 2020, we know what happened, and so it wasn't a typical school year.
No.
So we kind of had a pause on Mental Health Week in the schools, even though we were providing information to the schools. And then in the 2020-2021 school year, we kind of ramped back up, and we found that the schools wanted to do something at the beginning of the school year and also towards May, just because they know the kids went through a really traumatic time of not being able to come to school. Mm-hmm. And so the schools said, can we do 2 weeks of recognizing and doing the positive affirmations that were needed in the schools? So now, fast forward, we're to all school districts in Stark County. So we're providing all array of things for the schools, to the teachers, to the principals, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we couldn't do it without our partners, right? And so AultCare, huge partner, StarkMHAR, huge partner, but it's grown. So Q92 is involved now. The Pro Football Hall of Fame, we brought in other providers, ComQuest, Pathway, who are also in the schools providing those services, to say it's going to take all of us to make sure that our kids know there is a brighter tomorrow, and that they need to talk to each other and provide those positive affirmations to get through a day.
And having an education background, like, you can appreciate the whole child. So it is, I mean, it's difficult to have, you know, kind of that academic strength if they're not coming to the table kind of balanced enough to accept that information and to help them on that pathway.
Absolutely. I mean, if you really think about your day, right? if you start off your day with a worry, or that's what goes through your head most of the day, so you're not paying attention in math class, you're probably not paying attention in language arts, or wherever the class is, because your mind is on something that is bothering you. And so if we can kind of help them take away some of those worries, that's what we're here for, right? To help them find ways to see a brighter tomorrow, ways to kind of cope, ways to kind of deal with whatever the stressors are in their life. And that's what we need to do all the time, because if you're not socially and emotionally ready to learn, like I said, academics are not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And at least giving them the opportunity to kind of express those things and knowing that it's a safe place to be able to do that. And then they know that not only can they get their academic side of things, but kind of, again, addressing that whole child. So, Joe, what are some of those activities that will be taking place this year at each grade level, elementary, middle, and high?
So I'm going to use my cheat sheet here because there's so much going on, I didn't want to miss it. So let's start with our high school kids. The high school kids are created, some, which you're going to talk to two of yours later today, are those mental health champions, right? And so they created a message to each other, peer-to-peer messaging. And we took that and made it into a Unity video. So that Unity video is going to be shown at all the schools during the day, throughout the day, so that they can see that video. This year's theme is called Pause. Just take a breath, right? Pause. And so each student will receive a positive affirmation emailed to them through their school email or the Remind app, depending on which each person has. But we also have a poster featuring our mental health champions at each of the schools. And so those will be in the school. Again, seeing a familiar face, somebody I know is on that poster, so it's speaking to me directly. Our middle school will also get their posters, and then they're receiving a positive affirmation sticker, water bottle if they want to put it on their water bottle, wherever they want to place it, so it's a constant reminder. Also that email going out, positive affirmation to their email or Remind app. Then our elementary age kids are also getting the morning announcements. They're getting bookmarks, and so those bookmarks are to write a positive affirmation message. And what's cool about the bookmarks are that they're erasable, so you can write something new every day. It's a new message each and every day. They're also going to, this year is kind of unique in that we're the first time we're including the teachers and the school administrators to also receive different tips, ways that they can cope, because they, you know, secondary trauma, seeing kids go through something really weighs on you as a teacher as well. And so we're giving them tips, strategies, different exercises that they can use to provide their own positive mental health. Of course, we couldn't do this without our partners, so AultCare is donating a lot of the collateral and materials that we're putting out. So just to kind of give you a statistic, those materials will reach 53,000 students and over 6,000 teachers and administrators throughout Stark County. It's pretty impressive. It's a large reach out into the community, again, promoting that positive mental health.
And they can pass the positive message on. So that's
pay it forward,
pay
right?
it forward, right? Absolutely. So the past few years, CNA has introduced student mental health champions from each of our high school who present self-care tips and thoughtful insights to youth mental health. So why is that peer-to-peer message so important? I know as a high school teacher how important that is, but we will let you take the lead on that one.
Well, I'll just tell you, nobody wants to hear from a 50-year-old, right? They want to hear from each other.
Right.
And they want to hear, how are you coping? And if you can make it, so can I, right? They don't want to hear that, okay, well, when I was your age, they're like, stop. As soon as they start to say, here's what I do. I listen to music. I take a walk. All these positive ways that they can make a difference, coming from somebody their own age makes a world of difference. That's who they listen to. That's who influences them. So we thought, why not better to get positive role models to step forward and say, here's what you can do to cope. Here's the ways that I'm making it through a day, and you can do the same thing.
And kind of that transparency of every day I wake up, it's not perfect. So, and that's somebody that looks like them, sounds like them, and they can feel like, oh, okay, well, here you are, and you don't always have it all together. That's great to hear that I can I can make some of those positive steps too.
Absolutely, and we talk at our agency a lot about helping kids understand their today doesn't dictate their tomorrow, and temporary problems should not be solved by permanent decisions, right? And so we want to make sure that they understand that, and that's what the peers are saying. You can make it through this. Here's what I'm doing, and we can do it together. Many times you'll hear them say, I see somebody sitting off by themselves, I tell them, come sit at our lunch table. Those things can make the world of difference to somebody who's sitting there thinking, nobody cares. It's very clear that our peers care about each other.
Somebody does care,
Yes.
so and those peers reaching out. So John, speaking of student mental health champions, from StarkMHAR's perspective, how important is it to have students who want to be mental health champions, and how does that speak to how far mental health has come in the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, it's super important because, again, as Joe said, I mean, hearing from your peer is different from hearing from an adult or a teacher. And so one of the things that we know clearly is that one of the things that significantly impacts everyone's well-being, but also especially kids, is this sense of connectedness. And so how connected do they feel to the school? Do they have somebody that they can kind of talk to? And I think the opportunity for them to see kids that they know in the individual schools being these champions and talking about it, it certainly allows them to kind of break through some of those barriers about bringing up and having conversations with people as appropriate when they are maybe having some challenges. Ways, as Joe said, just some common tips are being offered about if somebody's look like they're isolated or having a bad day, how do you outreach them? And so to us, this whole concept of working on that connectedness piece and also just starting to talk about this openly addresses the stigma and the shame sometimes that goes along with people seeking help or asking for help.
And I know I've mentioned this in episodes before, but I feel like when your athletes, when your actresses and actors, they kind of come out and they say, hey, just because on screen or in this big interview that I've done, like I look like I have it together, but these are all the things I struggle with too. So again, it kind of is that same peer-to-peer, somebody that looks like me, sounds like me, is my age, all of those markers that they can have those authentic conversations outside of, maybe it starts the conversation at least.
And it's fantastic when you have athletes and well-known people come out, but you also have people that look like you are in the same schools, because then it kind of personalizes it. And an example that happened last year, I know some of the initiatives that were happening at Lake, our good friends live in Lake, and their child came home from school, brought some of the materials, and it facilitated a conversation at the table. And so that's where you start having this trickle impact that now not only is the child being exposed, but the parents are being exposed. They're talking about what's happening to the day and getting into some of those protective factors for kids that we know are important, like having dinner together, being involved in school activities. It can kind of help facilitate some of those conversations.
Taking some of those healthy coping measures, healthy conversations home to help the health and wellness of the whole household, no matter the age range.
Absolutely.
So StarkMHAR has been behind this initiative from the onset. I know Jill's coming in shortly to talk a little bit more about this, but what does it say for Stark County and StarkMHAR that all 19 high schools are on board for this week, and the peer-to-peer messages and Unity video has been played at each high school and at the Centennial Plaza again this year? Yeah,
and so as Joe said, we fund consultation services through StarkMHAR, which allows kids that might need to access services some dollars to, they can be referred by the teacher, they can be referred by family, or even as somebody in the community and access those services. Unfortunately, because of workforce, those are spread out across a couple agencies. And so what this really does is allow a single agency in combination with the other two to put out a common message across all the school districts. So everybody's kind of hearing the same message. There's some benefit to everybody getting kind of the same information. And so I think the positive is why the services might be spread out across agencies, the opportunity to do some common education to families and the kids in the schools, and it's consistent across schools, is really important.
I think consistency is a big key word, whether it be in education or in really any corporate facet. And when you're talking mental health and emotional wellness, all of those pieces, that consistency, I find that seems to be, and by having this common message and all these, like you said, maybe the agencies are spread out, maybe the way things, resources that can be provided, but this messaging can get out, and then it can get you
And communication is really important, and so the ability to have the information out so everybody's getting the same message, and it's not having to be kind of transcribed or shared by an individual teacher, but it's messaging that's going out consistently across the districts is really important.
Can I add on one thing? 'Cause I
Absolutely,
think
you
this
always
is a
can.
little important thing is, not only is it a consistent message, but it's a strong message.
Absolutely.
And I think that Allison Ray from StarkMHAR and our Dan Mucci and the mission advancement person at ComQuest have come together to really make sure it's the message that we want to get out to students too. And if you look at the posters, we're not highlighting depressed, we're happy kids, because kids, you know, go through things, but again, we all do, but we have those happy moments that we have to always remember. But I think the important thing is that it was a concerted effort. That it might have started out in 2019 with CNA, but really over the last couple years, it really has been a joint effort to get this message out.
And the approach to saying, okay, this might have been like a little bit of a brainchild here, but then bringing in those other agencies, and when they sit at the table and those voices say, ooh, how about this? Did you think about this? And could we try this? It really does kind of change an
Makes us stronger.
Yeah, it like sweeps across as this strong, powerful piece that continues to grow, and you continue to be able to invite in others, and it will just continue to blossom. And much like our young people, we hope that they continue to grow.
You plant that seed.
Yes, and I love it. So, Mike, AultCare has been another supporter of this event from the very beginning, which is not surprising. They're a fantastic organization. What specifically has AultCare's role in this initiative, and how does this tie into AultCare's message of You Matter?
Yeah, it's awesome when you think about the You Matter campaign. I'll take a step back and let you find out where it was born. It was an internal organizational development component for our teammates, and it was called Make It Matter. And so we're working really hard on workplace relationships internally, but then making it matter to our external clients, companies, et cetera. So we had a whole package around it. It was great energy about people, connections, making value from your peers. You heard this. It was a natural progression for us to say, hey, we have You Matter, and we've started to promote it as a way to corporately connect to our community. Well, then the suicide contagion came about, and we started to think, how can we lean in even further? Joe is a natural connection for us, and StarkMHAR as well, because what do you need us to do? We have Make It Matter, we have You Matter, but how do we translate that into services? And it was a natural progression to the point of we provided school counselors with some inspiration, t-shirts, posters, and then we start talking to Joe and his team, what do you need? So we just really hitched up our wagon and said, because our mission really is to improve the community's health, this fit with our mission in a great way.
It was a perfect marriage.
It was. It was.
Of an entire, like you said, all parts of the county and lots of different organizations to sit at the table and bringing in the AultCare piece and saying, okay, and for them to come to the table and say, yeah, what can we do to help? Because the mental health and wellness side of things is equally and really does drive some of your physical ailments. They go hand in hand. So again, like in education, the whole child, every piece of it, and from young people all the way to grown people. So why did AultCare choose to be part of this countywide initiative? We've kind of answered that, but
it's great reinforcement when you think about what we all just talked about, the power of relationship. And you can corporately say, we could just provide money. But it's bigger than that, it's deeper than that. And the idea was, how do we really establish a strong relationship through CNA and others to say, we want to make sure children, particularly in those impactful years, get what they need when they need it. So Joe's team and John through StarkMHAR programming, it allowed us to say, we can help with time, talent, and treasure. We can weave it all together. And what do you need for us to do? So it hit our mission, but most importantly, we saw faces. We saw these faces on this particular piece. And we said, how do we impact those faces? So it was a natural connection, and we want to continue to put power behind it.
The human element, giving it, we've talked the peer-to-peer piece, it gives it a face. I really believe, whether again you're young or whatever age range that you are, when you can put a face to something, that human that human nature piece of it really evolves into great things. And when humans come together for a great cause, you can see what great things can happen, and the reinforcement of those messages across the board and in many genres, and hearing that unity of all of the messaging. So, John, a few years ago, Stark County was struggling with adolescent mental health. So how important, and you kind of mentioned, Mike did, how important is it in removing the stigma around mental health, that so that young people are willing to step forward and help build a platform for strong mental health at all age levels?
Sure. I mean, so one of the interesting things is that there's a stigma around talking about mental health, or talking about if somebody's struggling, and specifically around suicide. There's a sense that if you even ask the question or talk to somebody about, are you feeling suicidal, that increases the chance of them attempting suicide, which isn't factual. And so what we learned from that conversation is it's about connectedness, and the amount of kids, when we did some surveys, that didn't feel connected back to their school or connected into the student body, it just kind of encouraged us to promote what we would call pro-social activities. And so one of the things as we were having the contagion, we focused, when I talked to parents, which we could have a whole other show on, is limiting access to social media, which is a big issue. But the other piece is, just getting your kids involved in one activity. So one after-school activity, whatever that could be. It could be church-related, community-related. But the other piece is this whole sense of talking about it and giving people permission to have conversations. And I have to believe that if kids start seeing folks that they know in the school talking about mental health and wellness, and just kind of starting to talk about the topic, that has to make it easier for them to talk about the great things that are happening and some of the activities that Joe are doing. But on the other side, which we think is really important, I think they'll be more apt to seek treatment or access the consultation services that are being provided. And so for us, it's just an ongoing campaign about educating people, but I think it's also about making sure that kids feel connected into their community, which is ultimately the goal. I mean, sometimes the schools take on that responsibility because every kid has to go to school, but I think the challenge is it really is a community issue, and any of these initiatives that kind of promote some of those aspects we're fully supportive of, and I think are really impactful, and the research kind of documents that.
I think the stage can be the schools because,
Sure.
like you said, they're coming through our doors, but there has to be meat behind the stage performance. And I also feel like normalizing really anything that we want to start having authentic conversations around, like you said, the more that you discuss it, the more that the language becomes a part of your day-to-day, and then it becomes less of a stigma and less of a, well, nobody really talks about that, or nobody really says these things. And when it becomes a little bit more normal to say, yes, we want you to be open and honest, and we want you to know that today might not be the best day, tomorrow could be a better day, maybe not, we don't know. But here are some positive things that you can kind of plug into your day-to-day. And I think the more that you have those conversations with adults and young people, that it can kind of continue to foster and grow kind of where you guys are with bringing attention to it.
Well, and I think back to like 40 years ago, the stigma around even talking about breast cancer awareness.
Oh, right.
And I think 30 years from now, people are going to look back and say, why was there this stigma talking about mental health? And the best way to do that is have people both at the national level, but also locally start having conversations and start making those connections, which I think this initiative is so important in what they're doing.
And I've even noticed just in the short time, I mean, I've spent about 20 years in education, and just in that short time, just the last few years, your kids do bring things up more often. I thought, oh wow, a huge difference in comparison to my kids that would have been teenagers 20 years ago. There is already such gains, and the more that we can, an initiative like this that you've spent kind of 5 years fostering, what it looks like in 5 more or 10 years down the road. So, Joe, Mike, anything else you'd like to add before we transition to bring in Jill and our McKinley High School Mental Health Champions?
We're just honored to kind of start at something and love seeing it grow and really have an impact in our community. I think if anybody has a chance, please stop down at Centennial Plaza, watch the Unity video. It's powerful. Kids just sharing their coping skills and that ability to bounce back, and that resiliency piece is so important. But we're very proud of what we've accomplished, and I look forward to what the next year may bring. I'm sure that we'll come up with another way to keep impacting their lives. So thank you. Thanks for putting a spotlight on this.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing your, like I said, wealth of diverse backgrounds and wealth of knowledge to the set today. And
it's the only time you'll see two lions with a leopard in between.
Oh, that is funny, true. And I'll just stand on my side of the table as a warrior. I'll just stay over here, and we'll just divide the line. We'll stay in our own corners, right? So thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate everything that you guys are doing. We're going to be joined by Jill Rowland, Regency Services Coordinator, and McKinley High School student mental health champion Bri'Rell Pickney and Celebrity Brown. Here is a look at this year's Unity video that we've been talking all about with all of the student mental health champions from across the county.
Pause. 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 There are times each of us feel overwhelmed. Some weeks project deadlines are looming.
Multiple tests are scheduled on the same day, and the weight of school feels unbearable.
The pressure each of us feels to do well in school with extracurricular activities.
Maintaining a social life, keeping up on social media, working, or
parents monitoring our every move can be enormous.
there are times when we need to pause
and tell a teacher, friend,
parent, or boss, I'm pausing for 5 minutes.
Pause.
During your pause, take some deep breaths.
Close your eyes, sit and relax. Listen to music, meditate.
Put your phone down. Know that it is okay to not be okay every day.
And talk to a friend, teacher, coach, or parent.
If that pause is not enough, if you are still not feeling better,
reach out to a trusted adult who can work with you to find it to help you.
There is no shame in your struggle or in asking for help when you need it.
If you are struggling with your mental health, then it is so much harder to perform well in school.
To be a good teammate or to perform on stage, to be a good friend or to do work well.
To be who you want in your relationships. The last few years we have all learned
that our mental health is just as important as our physical health.
So when you feel the pressure building up, help yourself get back on track by starting with a pause.
Happy Stark County Schools Mental Health Week.
Happy Stark County Schools Mental Health Week.
From Alliance High School.
From McKinley High School.
Happy Stark County Schools Mental Health Week.
From Perry High School.
From East Canton High School.
From McKinley Senior High School.
Canton South.
Happy Stark County Schools Mental Health Week from Sandy Valley.
From Jackson High School.
From Lake Middle High School.
From Minerva High School.
From Marlington.
From Northwest High School.
From the Massillon Tigers.
From Lake Middle High School.
From Hoover High School.
Glen Oak High School.
Happy Stark County Schools Mental Health Week.
From Louisville High School.
From Fairless High School.
From Tussle High School.
St. Thomas Aquinas High School and Middle School.
All right, welcome back to part 2 of our show today. And Jill, we'll welcome you to the set now. We kind of booted the guys off and brought in Jill Rowland, Celebrity Brown, and Bri'Rell Pickney to be with us. So tell our viewers a little bit about your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, and kind of just describe your career and how you ended up at StarkMHAR.
Sure, thanks so much for having me. I grew up in the Stark County area. I graduated from Jackson back in the early 90s, but followed my husband to Michigan, to his hometown where we lived for 22 years. And so I have a background in elementary education. That was my bachelor's degree. Then went on to get a master's in counseling from Central Michigan University. And I've done a combination of school counseling and clinical counseling, including some supervision over that period of 20 years. But 2 years ago, we decided to move back to my hometown where my family is, and have joined a position at StarkMHAR, working as Resiliency Services Coordinator, where I help oversee a lot of the school-based therapy programming that's happening in Stark County.
So again, that marriage between the education world and, you know, that mental health and wellness, I think it's in its, like, each of us has that little, like, just for a moment we think, oh, I really do feel like those two pathways just really cross over really, really well. So
yeah, for sure.
So I understand in your household you have a little bit of a rivalry in November over Michigan and Ohio State, kind of similar to how the McKinley and Massillon rivalries are in October. So share some insight into that, because I'm all about a good rivalry.
Yeah, absolutely. So living in Michigan for 22 years, and I had 2 children who grew up in Michigan. I now have a son who is a sophomore. He's finishing his sophomore year at the University of Michigan. But myself and my family, of course, growing up here, are huge Ohio State Buckeye fans. So yes, we have lots of fun with that. Really all year. The rivalry comes to a head in the fall, of course.
It's a forever battle.
It's a forever battle, yeah. My husband, moving from Michigan to Ohio, has been really introduced to how it feels when he puts on a Michigan sweatshirt and goes out into the community.
And we're everywhere. Buckeye fans are everywhere. Like, you go, it doesn't matter what state you're in, you go on a vacation somewhere to a beach, they're just everywhere. We're everywhere.
And if I have something Ohio State on and someone yells the OH, he rolls his eyes and is like, oh, go blue. So yeah, we have a lot of fun with the rivalry for sure.
I love that. So yes, now being a part of the Canton City School District, and my grandmother was a McKinley Bulldog, so it was already kind of in our family, like it was a rich tradition that we were Bulldog fans, even though I wasn't a Bulldog necessarily growing up, and now it's kind of full circle. Here I am as a Bulldog, and absolutely like would fight to the end for it.
Yeah.
So I can understand. So in that household, so half blue, half red, you know, make it work, right?
Absolutely.
So what is your specific role at StarkMHAR, and how do you interact with our school-based providers?
Yeah, so as John said earlier, StarkMHAR is sort of the fiscal agent, provider of funds for a lot of the programming that happens in Stark County. And so my role is to oversee school-based therapy, school-based prevention programs, really kind of helping work with all of the provider agencies who are a part of that, and making sure that therapists are placed in as many schools as want them as we can in terms of our limited resource that we currently have. But we look at it from sort of an equity perspective, where those highest needs are, and then make sure that those therapists are placed to help support the kids in their mental health needs. It's a fabulous program. I think having that background in education and then counseling, in Michigan there isn't a program like this, or at least where I was living. So I continue to be impressed with the collaboration of schools, of provider agencies, of StarkMHAR, to really make sure that the highest need areas, that the students just have that language and understand the importance of mental health, that's all part of their daily experience in school. It's not like these separate entities, which I just think is so important in helping them access those services.
And I feel like Stark County does a phenomenal job. Like, if you look at the counties around us, I'm sure whether it's Summit County or Portage County, I mean, they're, I guess, size-wise, maybe they are similar in size, but I really feel like Stark County is like this hidden little gem, because you're exactly right. I live in Carroll County, and there's not, I mean, it's a small rural place, and really if we want to have access to things, we're coming to Stark County anyway. So I feel like our high school students, our middle school, our elementary students, and their families really have the privilege of all these agencies working with them together to build up their children and grow these happy, healthy, someday young people that will 100%. Be able to give back to Stark County.
Absolutely. And having therapists placed right in the schools where students can access them just down the hallway is the easiest way to make sure that support is happening for all of them.
Right, and it's there. So it's, hey, I'd like to, instead of, okay, I have to call a doctor's office, let's find time in your schedule, in my schedule, and taking your child somewhere, it's the schools are able to say, okay, we got this. They're here every day, so let's block out this little bit of time. We'll make sure that this service is provided, and then this will be the follow-up, and it's all happening within just a regular day for them. And I feel like as a mom, that kind of takes a tiny little bit of pressure even off of me to say, my school is working with me to help raise my young people into blossoming young adults, and with those great coping skills and
Yeah, and I think with
resiliency.
that, it also sets the tone and provides that support for teachers and school staff so that there's a kind of a holistic attitude towards mental health being allowed to be talked about, reducing that stigma, making sure that students just feel that it's an everyday part of their needs of getting their mental health taken care of.
Yeah, no different than, when you come in, and I remember as a little kid, we gave our lunch money, or you put a little checkbox. All of those, it will become part of that day-to-day pattern for kids that I said in the first segment kind of normalizes, so it doesn't feel like it's something on the outside that you're trying to pull in. It's just a part of that bubble that you get to be around and be a part of. So,
absolutely.
So from a clinical perspective, how important is it for all Stark County children to have a week to be able to focus on mental health, especially following state testing?
Well, I think, as you said, just the sort of reducing stigma by having seeing their peers, having it part of that school day, integrated into that daily life, and then that week to kind of highlight, the things that are available to them, where to find resources, getting the teachers to talk about it, really just allows for that supportive atmosphere to happen. After state testing comes with a lot of pressure. It comes with a lot of really driven, mental task, to perform on that state testing. And so I think having a mental health week soon after that just brings them back and helps them feel supported if they are feeling that mental tiredness or feeling pressured, or maybe they didn't do as well, or what have you. It's just a way to really kind of bring it back to what's important for themselves to increase their mental health, how to cope with that stress, and how to lean on each other and their school staff as well.
Yeah, and to articulate all of that, to actually give them language around what they're thinking and feeling, and it's okay to be stressed. It's okay to, whether it's let down or you had all of that adrenaline rushing through you and kind of that dip down period that you can experience sometimes after those things, or maybe you didn't feel successful in a piece or a part of it, and then just being able to kind of talk through that and work through that.
Definitely.
So this week provides teachers and students an opportunity to open up and have discussions about mental health. Several years ago, this probably wouldn't be happening. So does this help you to provide students and parents the resources needed to find support in the community?
Oh, definitely. I think having Mental Health Week and bringing it to the forefront of conversation. And I think, as we said earlier, Stark County does such a great job of collaborating with each other and of making sure that people know where resources are available. That week of focusing on mental health provides an opportunity for students to really talk about it. And if they are feeling like they need some extra services, or there's something they need some extra help with, it's right in front of them. It's through the video, it's through the pamphlets that are being sent home, it's all over the place, so that parents can easier access those services, know who to call, students know who to reach out to. So it just, it allows for that to happen quite easily.
And how important is it for elementary students to write, those positive affirmations on their bookmarks and see that affirmation every day and have the ability to change that message? So I'm kind of a high school person. My brain thinks like young people, probably that even starting middle school, but the little ones, that is a totally different ballgame for me. So kind of tell us a little bit about how that's a piece of the puzzle that's really important.
Well, just like high school students, elementary age kids have those same sort of struggles with self-esteem, with fitting in. They want to feel good about what they're doing. They want praise. And so I think, as therapists, from a clinical perspective, we often focus on that mind, body, spirit connection, or how our thoughts impact the way we feel or the way we have perspective on things. And so if they have a card where they're writing an affirmation on, and they read that every day, or they see it every day, it just begins, sort of plants a seed to begin that positive self-talk that leads to better self-confidence and better self-esteem, and starts to teach them a little bit about self-reliance and feeling good about themselves. Yeah, so I think it's hugely important. I love that activity. I think it's fabulous.
So this year, all 19 high schools and all 3 mental health agencies, CNA, ComQuest, Pathway Caring for Children, that provide school-based services are teaming up. Does this united front help when you try to get resources out into the community? And I think the guys kind of talked about it in the first segment too.
Yeah, absolutely. So John had mentioned that we have a little bit of a workforce shortage situation happening.
Right.
We really need across the country, this is not just unique to Stark County, additional therapists and social workers because of the high need of just people seeking services. I think with reducing stigma and talking about mental health more people feel comfortable to seek those services. And so there's just a little bit of a shortage. So that's why it's important for all of those agencies to work together to really make sure that any gaps that are there are filled. Especially in terms of the school-based therapy program, we have had all of the agencies, and they've been wonderful, all working together to say, oh, well, this building has a gap. We might need someone there. Well, maybe this agency can fill in there. So it almost becomes like one big collaborative effort among all of the agencies to make sure that the needs are met of the students in Stark County. So it's perfectly fitting that all of them would work together on a mental health week for students as well.
So we have 2 of our representatives. They represent Canton McKinley High School. So Bri'Rell is one of the 2 Canton McKinley student mental health champions. So Bri'Rell has said in the past it's an honor to be chosen as a champion. So tell me a little bit about why that is such an honor for you to be a part of this program.
I would say it's such an honor just because this is a big issue in Stark County, and not only Stark County, but in our school district, so to be chosen as a student athlete, from a student athlete perspective, we go through a lot, way more. I don't want to say way more than the average student. Everybody goes through something differently. We just have a lot more on our plate because we have to please coaches, we have to please scouts, we have to please our teachers, we have to please our parents. It's just a lot going on, so I would say
and
just
working, having a job.
Exactly, having a job, just waking up, doing the same things and trying to please those same people. It's a lot, to go into, just a young person's mind, such as myself. So I would say it's a great honor, and I can speak for my district, the students, and the whole Stark County, so it's a privilege.
So celebrity, we have probably seen you in our little clips of the videos that you were able to help us put together, and you were our choice for teaming up with Bri'Rell as one of our mental health champions that represents McKinley High School. So thank you so much for being a part of kind of our team to be able to do that. And Celebrity is also a part of our cosmetology program. So she is a CTE kid just like Bri'Rell is, and we have fantastic programs in Canton City. So a real quick plug to that piece. I can't let it go. So Celebrity, why are conversations on or around the mental health awareness piece and mental health so important kind of from your perspective?
From my perspective, I'd say because mental health is at any age limit, really. I mean, growing up, you see a lot of people struggle with mental health issues, and now being the time of bringing more awareness to it, I think that it is great. And let me think.
No, I think going along, like you said, like from kind of as a young person, and you're more aware of kind of what's going on around you and having those conversations. So maybe conversations that you have with your friends or examples like that.
Correct. So it's definitely times have changed. I know my parents always mention how they didn't have those resources that we have growing up. And so I take advantage of that and I advocate it for so much, because knowing that there's adults who are still struggling with that, we can fix the problem before we go out into the real world, especially as a senior in high school. I'm moving on to my next chapter, and that means a lot of things. And I think a big thing it should mean is that I know how to handle my mental health, and I know how to let other people get that help as well.
Yeah, and having those those conversations with family and friends and your peers, and kind of being an inspiration to each other and kind of lifting each other up.
Building each other up, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
When you have that time. So I really feel like both of you are excellent examples of kind of that peer-to-peer. You can see it in your track world with, you know, the things that you participate in your community, like all those different platforms give you a chance to talk to your peers and give them that positive affirmation when they need it and have those authentic conversations. And I think, you know, you both do like a really, really good job of that, and your outstanding representations. I kind of said it before we started taping the second segment that they're superstars, really great kids, and represent McKinley with such class and pride. And this is just one more of those examples that you're able to kind of have your peers look to you for those pieces of advice when they need it. So, Bri'Rell, do you think that teachers, students speak openly enough about mental health in class, or do you know where to turn when you kind of feel like you would need assistance? How about coaches, adults, kind of from that side of things?
Honestly, I don't feel like that we speak openly enough about mental health, coaches, students, just in general. I mean, it's not something that just pops up in everyday minds, like this is what we should be talking about, you know, this is how we should express ourselves, you know. It's not something that I feel young adults are comfortable talking about just to anybody. So that's where I say trust comes in. You know, you have to build that trust with a student athlete or with a student in general, just for them to be able to talk to you and be able to trust you with their issues, because not everybody's going to listen to, you know, just you talking about how you feel and taking that in genuinely. So you have to be able to trust the teachers, the coaches, or whatnot. And I would say to turn to, we have an app, by the way, thank you, Superintendent Talbert. We have an app called, I believe, WhatsApp or something. Say something app on our tablet, so we can go there to provide whatever we need to talk about, and someone will reach out to us, whether it's a counselor, a teacher, somebody will reach out that's genuinely feeling for that student. And I feel like that's one resource we can turn to. Also, in my world, my coaches, I'm thankful to have coaches that actually come up to me every day, like, how are you feeling, Pink? Are you good? And stuff like that. So just those people around, I feel like those are the people who are able to take that step forward, just to, you know, have a student feel that type of way, to be able to cope with those issues, you know.
Right.
And it's always a great feeling to have. So, you know, if you're ever able to, you know, to just go that extra mile, not even the extra mile, just say, hey, how are you doing today? You know, to just anybody. That's why me and Celebrity are so big on just saying hi to everybody, even if we don't know them. We're just so big on that, because you never know. A hi goes a long way, you know. Maybe they need somebody to talk to for that day. So just to be able to say that somebody actually cared for you today, it's a great feeling.
Or recognize that you were there. Like,
exactly.
Identify that, like, it's valuable enough that I was here today and somebody recognized that I was actually in existence today.
Exactly.
A smile, a hi, like, that's huge when it comes to that. I know for high school, I realize it's a broader spectrum when you say K to 12, but I know how much that affects, whether it be a middle school student or a high school student, for a peer to say, hey, what's up? Like, oh my gosh, they really noticed that I was walking down the hallway. Or the lunch table example I was given earlier. I'm not sure if it was this segment or the first segment. So, anything else the two of you wanted to add when it comes
to add on to what Bri'Rell was saying, I see that a lot, because sometimes I don't even have to ask them if they're doing okay. Once I start hi, they're like, you know, sometimes it just starts like the conversation starter. Like, you don't really need to ask. Sometimes they just want a listening ear. And so I always try to be that person to whoever it is, especially in cosmetology, when people from like Virtual Academy come in or something. Like, I'll be like, hey, how are you doing? Like, my name's Celebrity. It just sparks such a bigger conversation. They'll tell me like why they're on Virtual Academy, just like personal issues that like I take in so much, because like I appreciate being that person for people, because I would want the same back for myself. And I think having those conversations with my friends, like, hey, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling so overwhelmed, I have this and that. Then we really get to help each other and lean on each other, because we're saying, okay, well, what if you start on this first? I can help you with this. Or it's just, I love how normalized it's coming to talk about our feelings, or even just having that shoulder to cry on, or saying that you're not okay is okay. So I appreciate that so much in our community.
I think that's a beautiful way to kind of close that out. And again, both of you do such a fantastic job of articulating exactly what you think and feel, and super excited to see things evolve for both of you when you move on to your next step. So Jill, we'll finish up with what resiliency skills would you like students from kindergarten to seniors in high school learn throughout their school years?
I think resiliency skills are super important in terms of positive development. You know, academic skills are also important. As a former teacher, I wholeheartedly believe that. But those resiliency skills that almost become just about how to manage things in a person's life are really important. So self-esteem would be one, self-confidence, ability to know how to cope with or how to kind of regulate emotions that come and go. You know, talking about pressures that you have or things that you deal with on your daily life, having some tools to be able to cope with those and manage those in a way so that the negative impact on your life is minimal. And then just knowing who and where to go to for help. And I think parents too, as they are raising their children and navigating the world of social media and friendship conflict and pressures in school and things like that, having both the children and then also parents know where to go to and ask for help is really important as well when things are becoming too heavy and are beginning to negatively impact their daily life. Knowing where to go. So again, to wrap it up, it's just kind of coming back to why the importance of this Mental Health Week is so great, because it allows for those conversations and for those resources, knowledge and availability to happen.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the two of you for being here, taking time out of Cosmo, Bri'Rell coming on this side of the camera and sitting on that side of the table. He's sometimes sitting on this side of the table as a host, so he gets to play all roles. So thank you for all the valuable resources. To the guests in my first segment, obviously their information and all of those resources. So for more information on this topic and so much more, you can visit the CNA website at www.childandadolescent.org, or you can call the CNA office at 330-433-6075. Thank you to Dan Mucci, especially for this show. This was a huge show. The Marketing and Development Coordinator, Office of Mission Advancement of Child and Adolescent Behavioral Health, for helping to coordinate this awesome episode and future episodes in this partnership. As for the TV 11 staff, we'll continue to bring you an inside look at the district each week during the regular school year, in addition to this series of shows on mental health and wellness. So if you're a staff member and would like to have a feature story on our program, please email me at power_j@ccsdistrict.org, and our station administrator, Bill Widener, at widener_b@ccsdistrict.org. We'd love to have you inside the studio to showcase the valuable experiences our kids have here at the Canton City School District and all the supports we have in place to educate the whole child. Please visit our website at ccsTV11.com, where you get information on all of our shows and watch us on your favorite device. We will see you next time.